I'm about to dissect 3 of the most common stages that you will probably experience when going from skinny and weak to aesthetic and jacked, and I experienced them as well. So I want to show you the common traits, the common life experiences that you can expect at each stage, and how to optimize each stage so you can speed up the time you're in each of them. So starting off with level 1, we have the obsessed newbie. Now this is what most guys end up being when they first start the gym. They're completely obsessed, and that is because of the apparent benefits. You see, when I started the gym, I was a complete loser. Skinny, insecure, had no confidence with girls, had nothing going for me at all. But the gym posed a solution. I had heard that the gym would get me muscles and it would get me respect and it would get me confidence. And obviously it did, right? And that's where most guys who are losers like myself, and you probably are or were, they find a North Star, they find something to work on for once, because most of our lives we were just spending it all on video games, killing people on Call of Duty, playing Fortnite, and just, sitting around and doing nothing. And if you're anything like me, you always wanted to progress on something, and this was the only thing we could progress on, video games. But suddenly, when we find something that gives us real tangible results, we are absolutely obsessed with it. And it's in this stage as well that you will show off any little bit of progress you make. So I remember going up to the quiet area in my gym, trying my hardest to bench just 40 kilos on the bench press, right? And I would do this over and over again. And when I finally made it, when I finally made a bit of muscle, I would tell everybody about it. I would be so hyped, and I would walk around in stringers. This is the type of phase you might be in right now, where you gained a little bit of muscle your first few kilos and you're rocking stringers, you're rocking tanks, you're doing everything you can to show off your proud gains, and so you should, right? And the thing is though, this is where most guys fail. This is where most guys, kind of get the start of the gains, and then obviously they're obsessed, but they don't really know how to progress. And that's why in this stage, you have to optimize your training philosophy and optimize correct exercise form. Okay, so if I was telling you how to optimize this stage, I would just say, learn the correct exercise form and actually stick to a training method early on. Because too many guys, there's this thing called newbie gains, right? It's when you're not used to going to the gym, and when you first start, you get the most accelerated amount of gains possible. But this is when it's so crucial to do things correctly. It's like learning any skill. When you're first starting, you will gain the most knowledge. Every time you go in the gym, you will learn something, you will get bigger, you will get stronger, right? So the mistake that a lot of guys make is they just dilly-dally and they waste this potential doing random bullshit, walking around doing 30 different exercises. Like, yes, it's good to learn the ropes, and yes, it's good to experiment and find out what you like and have a bit of fun. And we all remember, and if you're not started the gym yourself yet, you will know soon that you go in the first couple times and maybe you're invited by a mate and you just swing a few weights around and do a bit of this, bit of that, right? But honestly, it is so much more beneficial if you stick to something early on. And the thing I would tell you to do is to stick to progressive overload and focus on this every single workout. And what progressive overload is a methodology of improving your strength over time, week to week, session to session. And in this beginner stage, you can afford to actually add multiple kilos or pounds on each exercise per session, per week, and that's how you're going to skyrocket your gains, rather than just doing random football workouts and random useless workouts in the gym and wasting time and just building cardio. We're here to build muscle. So if you can do that, that is where your results are actually going to stand out. And I would apply this progressive overload to what I like to call the staple 6 movement patterns. And they are the things that are going to get you the most jacked, because they utilize the most leverages and the most different muscle groups possible all in one go, often known as compound exercises. And if you want to know about the staple 6, check out my other videos, or you can check the link in the description for my community, where I'll teach you how to become aesthetic from a skinny loser starting position. Now moving on to level 2, this is what is known as the dirty gym cell, right? This is the common gym cell phase most guys end up in, and they get stuck in forever. And I was here myself. I was making so many mistakes at this point. This is after you've trained for maybe a year or two, and you were just going in the gym and lifting weights, and you could really do anything to gain some muscle, and you did gain muscle, right? And you started getting a few real life benefits. Like, I remember going into school and people knew me as the guy who was hitting the gym, and the guy who was making gains and changing his life. And this is very good, but it's when you start getting this acknowledgement and when you start getting recognition that suddenly you discover body dysmorphia and you realize that this is a long-term journey, okay? You got the short-term validation, but now it's where we actually have to do stuff to make the results stick and to keep speeding up. This is where newbie gains are going to slow down. This is where you're not able to gain as much muscle as quickly, so you have to be a bit more calculated with what you're doing. And if you aren't calculated, if you aren't smart, you will end up just like how I ended up in here. This is a common position that most guys get in, and this is why guys never end up looking good. This is why I go into the gym and I see motherfuckers still doing the wrong stuff, still training like idiots, and they're still fat and they're still ugly and they have a little bit of muscle, but they're nowhere near the goal that they actually set for themselves in the first place. And honestly, it can seem counterproductive because at this point the gym might actually make you uglier than you were when you started, because you might be trying to speed up your progress and you might be eating too much, you might be overtraining, and this is exactly what I did. It caused bloating, it caused excess fat gain, and it just caused a bunch of stress in my life, and it obviously detracted from my life overall. So if I was in this stage, if I was past the beginner newbie stage, I would optimize myself to not be a dirty gym cell. And it's in this phase which is crucial to eat in only a small surplus. As I've told you in previous videos, muscle protein synthesis, or the development of new muscle tissue, slows down the more experience you have. So we can't gain the same amount of muscle in our second year of training as our first. So that means that we need to be eating less and not as much in a surplus, or else we're just going to gain excess fat tissue because our body can only generate so much new muscle with the calories we're eating. The leftover is just going to be fat and wasted adipose tissue, which is going to make us look like shit and not aesthetic, which is what we're aiming for. If you got too fluffy in this stage, like many of us do and like I did myself, we should implement a small cut or something to, initiate a body recomposition, okay? Or we could just not get too fluffy in the first place. That is a mistake that so many guys make, and it will cause you just another 6 months to a year of, stalling progress and having to cut body fat off, to only then reveal a lot of weak points that you could have touched up in this phase instead of just eating like a bloat cell and turning into a water buffalo. Think about your training. A lot of the times you will still be able to get away with progressive overload, but it might be a bit slower. So you have to kind of be more mindful with your recovery, and that's when optimizing for macronutrients and micronutrients come into play, so you can optimize for proper health. Because we've built ground one, we've done level one, which is to gain some muscle, but now we're trying to really ramp it up. Now we're intermediate, or we're late beginner. We need to actually keep progressing and get to the point that we want to be at, which is to becoming finally aesthetic. And it doesn't mean you're some David Laid figure. It just means you have the aesthetic properties that will start getting you real world results. And that's where I got to finally after years and years of training. And I'm making these videos and I'm doing this to help you guys go from losers to aesthetic and actually feel good about yourself, because it took me way too long, okay? Now, traits and experiences in this stage. Realizing the cut and a body recomposition was absolutely necessary. See, like I said in the previous stage, you saw as well, I was fat as fuck, but it's only when I became aesthetic, why I actually became aesthetic by going on a cut and by improving my body composition through a recomp, okay? And it's also when I focused on a female gaze physique, because it creates the most attraction and aesthetics, which is when I was able to get real world results, right? Because it's at this stage, we wanted to be aesthetic so we could get attention, so we could get attraction and respect. And it's only at the stage where you start to become aesthetic where these effects and this effort that you've put in start getting you real world positive, tangible benefits. Because if you're fat, if you look like shit, you're going to be seen as a gym cell. You're going to be seen as the guy who's just obsessed. But if you're aesthetic, right, you're going to get positive outcomes. You're going to get IOIs, so indicators of interest from girls. You're going to get a real separation from the rest of the guys in your school, in your workplace, in society. This is the point where real world results happen and you actually start feeling, looking good and being rewarded for your hard work over the years, okay? And honestly, here is when your hormones are most optimal, your metabolism is more optimal, and just being aesthetic kind of makes you appear as less of a try-hard. In this stage, when you finally start building a good physique after many mistakes, like I made myself, your physique does the talking, and you don't need to be a try-hard flexing at every point you go to, flexing in every picture like an absolute gym cell, wearing stringers everywhere you go. No, you become more subtle with it, and the physique does all the talking, because you are now in appeal territory, my friend. You are now in the realms of aesthetics which we want to be in. And like I said, it doesn't even have to be extreme. You just have to enter this stage to really get some serious positive benefits in the real world. Now, how to optimize this stage, or more importantly, how do we get to this stage in the first place? Well, two key things that I want to tell you is focusing on your testosterone and your health markers will help you get to this stage, because like I said, a lot of guys will build some muscle, but it's hidden by fat or it's hidden by bloat, and they're not optimizing their health, because obviously you want to get aesthetic, but becoming a healthy human individual is the point of this as well. You can't be strong just in the gym. You have to be strong mentally, you have to be strong physically and socially, and with immune health, all this stuff. So when you focus on improving your testosterone levels, you'll be more assertive, you'll be able to back and leverage the physique in real world situations, like talking to girls, attracting, new friends, new, dating partners, all this stuff, and getting real life opportunities. And once we achieve this physique through cutting or through just consistency over years and years of training, right? We want to be using the physique as an entry point and become a well-rounded guy. Because in our early stages, we thought that the physique was everything. And yes, it's important to obsess over building a physique. But once you get established, once you start becoming more and more aesthetic and more good looking, obviously the level of effort we have to put in to get to a good point has decreased, because we're nearly there. It becomes super slow to build muscle, super slow to do all these things and fine tune our physique. So we need to be focusing on other things, and that is to become well-rounded. Use the physique as an entry point. Get the attraction, get the initial first gaze, and then use your social skills to actually achieve real things in life, because just having the physique is not good enough. You need to be developing everything and become a well-rounded guy, and this is the brutal mistake that I learned way too late, and so many guys still don't learn at all, because I went from a loser, I got aesthetic, but I still had the loser traits, okay? So that's why I'm trying to teach young guys. It's my mission to help them not only become aesthetic and build a good physique that they can be proud of, but use it in the real world, so they're not losers, they're not incels, they're not virgin guys who can't speak to girls, who can't do anything. So I hope this has outlined the 3 levels of aesthetics and how you can actually optimize for each stage and how to get to the next one. And if you want help, like I said, becoming well-rounded and going from a loser, just like I was, you saw in that first picture, to becoming aesthetic and becoming confident, being able to talk to somebody on the other side of the screen with no hesitation, no stuttering, like now, then check the link in the description. Just remember that progress is purpose, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.